is a fascinating question posed by the great spiritual mystics regarding our holiest prayer. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. In Hebrew, the word one, Echad, is somewhat misleading in this context, they question, because God is not one in relation to others. God is unique and singular. So rather in Hebrew, they wonder, it should have said the word Yachid. So Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Yachid, Hashem is only one. Echad in this context suggests that one is followed by two or three. Echad, Shnayim, Shalosh, etc. So if we wanted to emphasize that there is only one God, why is the Hebrew word Echad used rather than the more uniquely emphatic singular term of Yechidut, of the singular oneness of the Almighty? Before I address their response, I want to take it to an idea in this week's Torah portion that relates these two ideas. In the Torah of this week's portion, Shoftim, it says that one should not erect a monument of an altar to God that God despises. In other words, God prohibits the Jewish people from erecting a singular stone, a single monument, to be as an altar for the Almighty. Rather, what can you do? A mizbeach is a stone structure comprised of many stones together. Interestingly enough, the term the Torah uses in our Parsha for a prohibited altar is called a matzeva. Matzeva means monument. Some of you are familiar with that term for the monument that's used in cemeteries as a marker for those who have passed on. A mizbeach is the term the Torah uses for the altar in the temple where offerings were brought to the Almighty. And thus the Torah comes and teaches us that a monument type of altar, a single stone, a matzeva, cannot be used, it cannot be constructed, rather only a mizbeach. Here again we're confronted with a perplexing distinction, but what does God care? What kind of altar is being constructed, whether it's one stone or many stones? Who cares? What's the point? And why such strong language that you should not erect a monument, Asher Sanei Hashem Elokecha. You should not make a matzeva that God despises. God despises one type of stone and he loves other stones. Even if God, for whatever reason, did not want a single type of monument made for an altar, why the strong language that God despises such an altar? There are numerous answers that are given, but the one that I want to focus on is more of a spiritual Kabbalistic idea, and that is that the Torah here is teaching us really a profound lesson. It was a desire of the Jewish people to come close to God that led to this idea of sacrifices according to Maimonides, that this was a path that God allowed for people to feel like they can come close and contribute something and connect to the Almighty. And while other nations and pagan nations and other faiths of the time were also bringing offerings to their gods of the sacrificial sort, God gave a channel to the Jewish people to harness this idea, to wean them off of the negative influences of sacrificial cult-like offerings. And the offerings in the temple were meant to be a very defined, that only in a very singular space, only in very, very particular types of offerings. There had to be meditation, that a process. And the idea, according to Maimonides, was to give a holy outlet for the human being who wants to connect to God in a tangible, physical way, not just in a mystical, transcendent way. That being the case, the Torah is suggesting that a single stone represents a singular way of connecting, that only one way is the right way and all the other ways are wrong. A mizbeach, a kaleidoscope, a symphony of stones that come together to create a foundation to connect to God, is how God tells us through the Torah that we must realize that to connect to Hashem, there's not only our way or the highway, not only through the prism of my way of thinking, but to recognize that there is a myriad ways and there are numerous opportunities for us to connect to God, and that we should not construct an altar to God of a singular vision that's made only of one monument. That is idolatry. Rather, a Mizbeach recognizes the multifacetedness of so many different types of human beings and processes of thought, of emotion, of intellect, of yearning, and that through the 613 commandments of the Torah, each one of them is but another stone building together to create a Mizbeach rather than a Matzeva, an altar rather than a monument. Because spiritually what that tells us here is that someone who is so focused on their own path being the only way, and that everyone who's not serving God the way I do, everyone who does not recognize the truth the way I see the truth, is outside the pale, is someone who belongs to a different cult, not to me, not to my religion. Or as the saying goes, someone who worships anything but the way I do is a cultist differently than I am. Rather, recognize that perhaps you don't have all the answers, only yourself. And a Mizbeach is the representation of hundreds, thousands of different sparks, different lights coming together to create this beautiful tapestry. The way a symphony brings together numerous types of instruments and melodies and notes to create something that is so beautiful that one note itself cannot articulate. The same is true like a rainbow. You can have a beautiful color, or the sages teach us. It can be the most beautiful color in the world, but it's not essentially beautiful. It's only nice, because one color is static. It's the same. Only a rainbow, which brings together all the different myriad of colors that complement each other, is where you have true integrated beauty. This is represented by the Mizbeach, that God only wanted the Jewish people to bring all offerings on this type of altar, not on the single one, because he wanted people to understand that it's a communal endeavor, that we must come and connect with each other and not silo ourselves in our own bubble and think that only our way is holy, only our way is proper, and push out all the other human beings, all the other possibilities to enrich our own spiritual experience. Which brings us back now to the Shema, which our sages so poignantly point out that the word Echad in the Shema is meant to highlight just this point. Because you see, Yachid, which means singular, means that there is one God, he is singular, but he's disconnected. He lives in his own world. It's transcendent. He is not focused. He is not integrated into our lives, into our universe. Rather, Echad, our sages tell us, we are supposed to meditate on the Aleph, the Chet, and the Dalet. The 1, the Chet is the 8 levels of heaven. The 4, the Dalet is the 4 corners of the world. When we meditate, when we say the Shema, we're saying that the Shema, here, listen Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, the God, Hashem, which is transcendent, Elokeinu, he is also our God. Hashem, the Lord that you think is removed and transcendent, is Echad, he is also present. That the divinity, the transcendency, the majesty of the Jewish Almighty is not just a God that lives off and comes in only once in a while to look into and take interest into human and worldly affairs. Rather, it is Echad. At the same time that God is transcendent and is omnipotent and is infinite, he is also present in the multiplicity, in the variety of this vast universe that he created, in the complexity of the human being and all human beings, who, as our Torah tells us, that no two human beings share the same mindset, share the same thought, and have the same exact stamp. We are all individual stamps of the Almighty. When we recognize that our true strength is in our diversity, coming together to become, as the famous expression on the, no pun intended, the almighty dollar, e pluribus unum, from many, one, to realize that the strength of unity is not there when there is only one of something, one stone, one monument, one path, one way, but rather when there is a diversity coming together of many stones to create an altar to God. When there are many human beings coming together to realize that our greatest strength as a civilization, as a people, and as a religion is to recognize the value and the preciousness of each and every single one who might be slightly different than us. But it is through those colors, through those notes, that we create the symphony of connecting to the infinite God, who is also reflecting back to us the echad, the oneness through diversity, not the oneness in absence of. Shabbat Shalom. May we all remember that we are forever one.